Well, one thing that's important about the concept of having enough and independence is that when most people, even if they are independent, they wake up every morning, what they want to do is go to work. One of the big problems with the FIRE movement, the financial independence, retire early movement, where people are like, they're going to be a super saver and then retire at age 31, whatever it be. So many of those people who actually did that and retired at age 31, once they retired, after about 2 weeks, they were bored out of their mind. And if they did it for 6 months, they were clinically depressed. Because for most people, you want to be productive. You want to keep doing it. So having enough doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to stop working. It just means you're going to keep doing only the work that you want to do. There's a really interesting question that Patrick O'Shaughnessy asks a lot of people in his office. He says, if you won $1 billion in the lottery, but you had to stay at this job, you're a billionaire, but you can't quit. What at this company would you want to do? And what would you get rid of? And virtually everyone has an answer for that question. They say, oh, if I didn't need the money, but I have to stay, I would love to work on this project. I love working on this thing. This, that, and the other is all bullshit. So like in any job, there's going to be something that you want to do. There's going to be some project, there's going to be some position, or maybe it's like being an artist, whatever it would be. It's not that you stop working. It's that when you have enough, you get to pick and choose which of those things you're going to end up doing. If I were on my deathbed tomorrow, would I regret working hard and saving a lot of money? And my answer is absolutely not. It would give me so much pleasure to know that my wife and my 2 young kids are going to be fine. And the opposite of that, I cannot fathom being on my deathbed and looking at my wife and my 8-year-old son and my 4-year-old daughter and thinking, you guys are screwed. That would be the biggest regret I can fathom. So I think a lot of people would look at someone with a high savings rate like me and would assume that I'm going to regret it on my deathbed. And who knows? But I have to think it would actually be the opposite. What gives me so much happiness and pleasure is taking care of my family. And if I were to go tomorrow, I wouldn't regret for 1 second the car that I didn't buy, the big house I didn't buy, the nice clothes I didn't buy. Not for a second would I regret not doing those. Even if you want to give money away to your family, don't wait until you die. Don't make your kids wait or like hope you're going to die so they can get their inheritance. Give it to them when it really matters, which for most people is in their 30s and 40s. If you wait until you die at age 90 and your kids are 60 and then they get your money, like what's the purpose of that? Give it to them when they need it. When they're raising kids and whatnot, that's when they need your money. I really like that concept. I think about that with my own kids. I don't think I've ever talked about this, but it was about a year ago. We flew, my son, who was me, I guess he was 7 at the time. We flew first class and we explained to him that this was not normal. This was not going to be the way it is. As soon as he did it, he went home. He told all of our neighbors, told all of his friends, told everybody at school. And that was when my wife and I were like, can't do this. Never again. You see how quickly somebody can be spoiled or use that to try to show other people that they are superior to them. No, we can't ever do this ever again. I didn't fly first class till I was 35. He did it at 7. And so when I first did it at 35, I remember feeling, I earned this. I worked for this. And it also felt so special to me because I'd flown coach 9,000 times before that. So it felt amazing. And so I think about that a lot. There's a great quote from Charlie Munger, where one of his rich friends says, Charlie, if I give my kids all of my money, is that going to ruin their ambition? And Charlie says, of course it will, but you have to do it anyways. And the guy says, why? And Charlie says, because if you don't, your kids will hate you. And I think that too is like, lots of Charlie Munger quotes are framed as black and white. They're extreme, but I think that's probably like 80% true. That if you are a wealthy person, and I'm not talking billionaires, if you just have a moderate amount of wealth that you might pass along to your kids someday, that your two options are kind of, at least to some extent, hurt their ambition or risk some level of strife. And it's always child dependent. Like I always make the example that if 18-year-old Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk inherited $1 billion, wouldn't have made any difference to their ambition. They would not have slowed them down by 1 second. But most people, including myself, it would have. Like I was driven by fear of not making it, which is what most people are. I was scared that I was not going to find the right career, that I wasn't going to make it. And that's what drove me. Some people don't need that, but I think it's very rare. I think the huge majority of people, if you give them an easy life, they will take it and embrace it with both hands. Which is Warren Buffett's company, has like $150 billion of cash right now. And that's their entire 60-year history of Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway is build up a cash, wait 10 years for an opportunity, deploy it all, and then go back to waiting and building up cash. And that's how they've done it. Good opportunities are rare. Of course they are. They should be rare. It shouldn't be that anybody can just open up their stock account and find the opportunity of a lifetime. For the ordinary person, endurance and patience is 99% of what you need as an investor, because the opportunities there to invest in a low cost index fund are available for everybody. Do it from your phone, open up a Robinhood account, buy some index funds. Anybody can do that. And so but that was not always the case. It used to be like 20 years ago that the only people who could invest were people who had a lot of money and could afford a broker and had a connection to a broker, had to know a guy. And even then you were going to pay a ridiculous fee to that person. The joke. And that's 20 years ago. It's not that long ago. So I think like people aren't grateful enough or appreciative enough of how much things have changed that open up those opportunities for everybody. Fire phone from Amazon, which if you don't know, Amazon built a cell phone. It's called the Fire phone. And it was a joke. It was a disaster. It was a massive flop. And he was doing like an analyst call. And this analyst talked about like, hey, the Fire phone flopped. Like what happened there? And Bezos said, if you think that was a big failure, just wait. You've seen nothing yet. And like, that's why Amazon's successful. They're willing to try 1,000 things with the idea that they know 990 of them are going to fail, but the 10 that work are going to be massive. And if you can fail well and have the mentality to fail and the financial backing to be able to fail, like make sure your bets are not that big and you can just keep taking little risks all the time, the optionality that you get from that, like the odds that one or two of those are going to explode are huge. It's massive. I mean, it's no different than how do you win the lottery? You have to buy thousands and thousands or millions of tickets. If you buy billions of tickets, you'll probably win the lottery. It's probably not going to pay off because it doesn't work like that. But it's the same concept. Like if you take enough swings at bat, one of them is going to hit eventually. If you're managing a hotel, you don't want every room to be sold out because that means you're not pricing high enough. You know you're doing a good job when you have 10 empty rooms. That's when you know you're pricing the other rooms at a high enough rate. So there's always going to be like some level of what looks like failure that you need. And if you don't have it, you're not taking a big enough risk. And the biggest source of gravity there is laziness. The reason you're successful is because you work so hard to get to where you were. And now that you feel like you've made it, now that you feel like you're on the top of the mountaintop, you get lazy. And that's so many companies fall for that. So many careers fall for that. There's a great story from Jerry Seinfeld where he said that one of the reasons that he quit the show when it was still going gangbusters is because he could start to sense that what made the show successful was starting to go away. He said, and part of the reason is because he got so famous. When he was not that famous, he could go sit in a coffee shop and watch how people ordered their coffee and make a joke out of it. He was observing how society worked. Once he got very famous, he couldn't do that anymore. He was too famous to go sit in a deli and watch how people ordered their sandwiches. He couldn't do it. So therefore, he didn't have a lot of the source material that he had before. And so he was like, look, what made me so funny and the show so successful, I can't do anymore. So like red alert, let's pull the plug before it gets really bad here. So that's like a very specific example, but what he realized that what made him successful was gone. And a lot of CEOs will have this problem too, where what made them successful was that they were a scrappy startup founder and they were very good at building a product. But now that the company is big and successful, they also need to be an HR manager. They need to be a finance specialist. They need to be a marketer. They need to be all these other things. And therefore their time is pulled away from what they're actually good at, which was building a product. Travis Kalanick of Uber, the founder of Uber, probably nobody in the world was better at scaling a company like Uber than he was. And there were a few people who were worse at managing a big company than he was. So it's like what made Uber successful is what pulled him away from being a successful manager at that. He was very good at one thing. He was the best in the world at that one thing. But you shouldn't think that like it's going to last during another phase of the company's life. But I think for a lot of people, this should not be a scary thing. The fact that after you've made it and have some success and some wealth, that you're not as hungry as you used to be, that's fine. You just have to accept it. It gets dangerous when people don't realize it and they are less hungry. They're not as motivated, but they're still going to try to go start a new business even though they don't need it anymore. And then they're shocked when that business doesn't work. Most people would quit full stop when their net worth hit 10 million or less, 3 million. And so for someone to have a net worth of 10 billion and to wake up and say, I'm going to keep going as hard as I possibly can, that's why they have that level of success. It's complete insatiable hunger for more. Well, the kind of person like Elon Musk who has that mindset to say, you know, when he was 30 years old or whatever, he took on GM, Ford, Chrysler, and NASA when he was like 30. The kind of person who thinks that is not the kind of person who's going to say, I have enough. I'm going to put it all in muni bonds and go live on the farm. Like, it's not the person who thinks they can do that and can pull that off is the kind of person who's never going to stop. If Elon Musk lives till he's 97, he's going to be starting new rocket companies for sure. It is so natural for everybody to compare yourself against others. For me to measure my level of success by not saying, what do I have? But by saying, what do I have relative to that guy? Not how comfortable is my house, but by saying, how big is my house relative to that person over there, to my neighbor, to my coworker, to my siblings. And one of the problems that makes it more difficult today than it's ever been is that it used to be for my parents' generation, my grandparents' generation, when they compared themselves to other people, it was relative to their neighbors or their coworkers. It was a pretty small group of people, maybe a couple people who you saw on TV or heard about on the radio. But now today, just everybody, including myself, their comparison group is the most sophisticated algorithm on Instagram or TikTok. And so no matter how well you're doing, no matter how great your house is, no matter how much money you're making, you turn on Instagram 100 times a day like everybody else, you open it up, and there is somebody out there who looks better, happier, more successful, more beautiful than you are. And so this topic, I think, has always been true. It's always been important. It is more important today than it's ever been. The idea of keeping your expectations in check, because it's easier today than it's ever been to let your expectations just spiral out of control. I see this with my own kids, my 9-year-old son. When I was growing up, normal people drove old pickup trucks and rich people drove new pickup trucks. My son, who's 9, his definition of rich is like a private jet and a private island, because he watches Mr. Beast and it's like, oh, sit in the circle and you win $1 million kind of thing. It's a completely different level of expectations than even I had 20 or 30 years ago. There are areas in life where particularly a lot of people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s are falling behind relative to previous generations, particularly something like home ownership. It was more attainable in previous generations than it has been, particularly in the last couple of years. So empathy, this is not me saying, oh, you should just feel better. You should just be more grateful for what you have. You actually are doing fine. There is some empathy that has to be involved here. I think you start with empathy because if somebody feels like they're falling behind, that's their truth. But I think it's important to realize too that all happiness is just the gap between expectations and reality. Where the reason that person has not been able to save as much as they thought is because their expectations for many years probably have been spiraling out of control. And they were spending more money than they should have been because they were trying to chase who they wanted to be, even if it wasn't necessarily the level of lifestyle that they could afford. And so they were